Welcome to the Man Rules Podcast. If you're looking to live with more intention, build connection, and live a more authentic, meaningful life, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Dan Griffin. I don't know about you, but it seems to me that they keep changing the rules for us men without telling us. So each week, I just throw out the rule book and cover the tough topics about the real issues that men face. At the end of the day, I'm not here to tell you what kind of man you're supposed to be. I'm here to help you make your own rules and become the kind of man you want to be. So let's jump in. Welcome to another Man Rules Podcast, and this is episode number 2 of the Man Rules Deep Dive with Michael Deneen and Tim Walsh. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Hey, Dan. Hey, Michael.
Hey, guys.
So we've already had some positive responses for this first episode that we did because it's a fairly unique approach to men communicating. And so that was certainly the intention. So I'm hoping that we can continue with that. So people who heard the first one, we're going to change up the format a little bit. And we're going to focus on one topic tonight. And after each of us shares, the other two are going to give feedback immediately, and then the next man is going to go, but we'll just check in. So I was thinking tonight the topic would be on sex. You know, it's probably a ratings ploy. If I had to be honest, it's probably a ratings ploy. But
hey, Dan.
Yeah,
I have to go. There's an emergency. I didn't realize it. No. Just kidding. Go ahead. Keep going.
Oh, that's a joke? Premature evacuation. All right, that's good. That's good. You got me, because what everybody doesn't know is that Michael was a little late coming to the party this evening. So when he said that, I actually thought he was serious. All right. So who wants to start?
It's your party.
Oh, Tim, you did such a great job last time.
Oh, yeah. I'm older and wiser now.
All right, I'll start. I'll jump in. That's fine. You know, I think this is probably going to be a conversation that we're going to have a lot. And it's really looking at, you know, here we are, all of us married over 10 years. I'm married almost 14. Michael, how long for you?
I've been married 15.
All right. And then Tim, how long you married, Tim? You're on mute. Hold on. Oh my
man.
God. Okay.
You got excited.
I'm out there dying laughing, trying to finish my business, trying to reach in the truck at the same time and find the mute button. Anyway.
All right, everybody. So I'd asked the guys to put everybody who's not talking to go on mute. So Tim wasn't expecting me to check in with him, so he's pulled over on the side of the road and he's urinating. That's hilarious. How long you married, Tim?
Oh, shit. I want to say 13 years, but it's probably wrong.
Way to go, Tim. Way to keep the stereotype alive.
Some parts of the stereotype I'm proud of.
You know, so here we are. We're all guys have been married over 10 years. And for our generation, that's like considered a golden anniversary. You know, the question is, how do we navigate all of the stuff around the man rules and sex? Oh my gosh. Okay, so
I got completely thrown with the whole, what the hell, how long am I married question. That just put me into a freaking tailspin.
Okay, so first off, what I'm going to do, just for our listeners who aren't as familiar with the man rules, one of the pieces that I talk about all the time is the man rule around sex. And then I've distilled it into like one sentence. Not that it covers everything, but it covers a lot. And that one sentence is, have as much sex as possible, whenever possible, with as many hot and different chicks, young chicks, as possible, with as big of a dick as possible. that is kind of one of the internalized mandates that guys are walking around with all the time around sex. And we could break that sentence down a lot. I just give that as a little bit of information as we have this conversation, because I learned about sex from pornography. I had like a little bit of a conversation with 8th grade health ed or something like that. And that was about it. And then I didn't have any kind of sober sexual interaction with anybody until I was 21, because of my use and my fear and my insecurity. And my insecurity around sex, even when I was completely shit-faced, I had still a lot of discomfort. So here I am in this marriage with this person that I really love and respect, and navigating a healthy sex life has been very, very interesting. Being able to just normalize the conversation. So, at this point of our marriage, she's busy, I'm busy, we've got an 8-year-old. Our communication is pretty good when it comes to sex. We've been able to be more open, more playful, to get through some of the shame that prevented us from being able to talk about, what we would like or what we want to try. But, I just did a podcast with this guy, Michael Domish, and it's a great podcast, but he talked about like how important it is to just have these open, honest conversations where you literally say like, what would you like? Tonight, I would love it if you would do this. Or would you like me to do this? And how does it feel when I do that? And I don't know that a lot of us necessarily, I certainly didn't get that level of comfort. And I still don't know that I do have that level of comfort. But I think the big thing for me is pulling apart this idea that intimacy equals sex, that I think so many men have, and I certainly have struggled with, where it's like, how do I allow myself to connect with Nancy in all the different ways that we can connect, and have that be good enough, have that be fulfilling, without thinking that it needs to lead to sex, or if it doesn't lead to sex, that somehow is a rejection, or with this, some of the stuff that she's got going on, just trying to not take personally her own challenges around feeling sexual, feeling sexy, and wanting to engage. And just, at 44 years old, almost 14 years married, it's amazing to me the anxiety and the emotion that comes up around sex when we're having it, when we're not having it. And Nancy is going through some serious physical changes right now at her age. And those physical changes and the whole issue of menopause is just so significant for women, and it has such a big impact. And, I want to be supportive to her first and foremost. And I don't want it to be about whether or not I'm getting laid. I want it to be about whether she feels loved and supported, and whether she feels, that I'm not just worried about getting laid, and that it's more about connecting and all of that. So where I'm at right now is just really trying to be okay with our sex life not being where I'd like it to be, but also more importantly, I think, having a real understanding why it is in that situation, and to not make that about me, to not somehow lose sight of the fact that part of why our sex life is in a little bit different space right now is because Nancy's got such a profound experience happening for her. If I'm not like present and supportive for that, I'm just sending the wrong message to her about what it even means to have a sexual partner, or to have her as my sexual partner. So, I think that's a big piece for me of what's been going on around the sex. Overall, quite honestly, the sex life has been quite nice, and it's letting go of it needing to be a certain frequency, or that somehow means something. And that's an old tape, but it's still there. It's somehow equating whether it's my manliness or how much she loves me or cares about me or is attracted to me or how much I actually fulfill her sexually by the frequency, even when intellectually I know there's so much more going on. So that's me. That's where I'm at.
Thanks, Dan.
So
Thank you, Dan.
feedback.
I'll let Tim start.
Thanks, Michael. The kind of last thing you touched on is what struck me the most is the frequency or quality. I don't know if you even said quality. That's the word that popped into my head. The idea that you should have a certain amount a certain way, and she should respond or provide in a certain way, that you're conscious of that. You're conscious of that being part of the story around sex. So I just want to acknowledge that you're aware of that is huge, and it makes me think of where I'm at. Just it caught my attention. I want to emphasize to you that I believe what I'm hearing is you're grateful for the process that you guys are going through, because that's the key, right? You're going through this together, even though it's significantly physically, emotionally, spiritually all happening within Nancy. You guys as a couple are experiencing this change together, and yet at the same time you're finding a deeper level of communication and the connection between sex and intimacy. So I'm hearing super clear, the end of everything you just said was your awareness of expectations of your own internalization of what it means to have a good or healthy or robust sex life. And maybe you don't have to listen to that voice, and that will make you that much more present for where Nancy's at and more intimate fundamentally in sharing what sex life you actually have. It's interesting to give feedback already when so much of what you were talking about was really hitting home in my own experience right now. So I'll get more about my own stuff when it's my turn, but I want to emphasize again what I heard crystal clear. A lot of this is around expectation based on the rules. And if you're able to give yourself a freedom to allow it to be something different than those old stories, I think it's going to be really cool. I hope that made sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. I hope we continue to do the podcast or just explore these issues, these topics on our private, talks with each other, because I think over the years, which would be, talking about this hundreds of times, but I get you, and I know that there's so many aspects to this, and I can relate to a lot of what you said about the messages that you received early on, that I received early on, where they came from, how they got hardwired in, and the voices that still come back, and running the gamut from super grateful to be in this and figuring this out with another person, and the awkwardness of the whole thing and the beauty of it all, and just kind of growing up together and learning how to connect and be intimate and be friends, and having it turn sexual, and if it does, and get physical, and what that feels like and looks like, and how comfortable we are. I can relate to all of that. I can relate to that process of sometimes feeling like the victim, or feeling denied, or feeling deprived, all the way to feeling like I'm super lucky guy to be where I'm at in that area of physical connection with my wife. So I appreciate you taking the risk to open this conversation, because there's like 1,000 different ways you could take it. So this is a good place to start. So I appreciate you leading off.
Thanks, man. Why don't you show that appreciation by going ahead yourself?
Man, so I was thinking, since you kind of started with married life, so I guess the conversation around sex should definitely uh, explore, because I thought that I was fairly healed coming into marriage at like 7 years of sobriety, of recovery, and that I'd done a ton of work on myself. Got to a place where I was fairly healthy. But I was, in hindsight, I only knew what I knew going into marriage. I didn't really realize how, I'm not shame myself, but how wounded and stunted and how many intimacy issues I actually had. So it's been quite a journey, the 15 years. I can say that I would dissociate a lot. I was so used to not like being present in that moment, and not really being there. I was so up in my head that as time has gone on and I've become more physically and mentally, emotionally, spiritually coming into marriage, that I was healthier than I actually was. And so it's been quite a journey, at times traumatizing, and has been a hardship for Jill, how uncomfortable I have been with my body and how easily I can get my feelings hurt, or easily just kind of shut down and push her away when I feel any type of rejection. And that early on, as a process, I would dissociate while being physical, and so it's been a journey to actually really be in the room and be present and really be with her. And the more that happens, the more gratifying it becomes, even though we're busy and we have the same probably issues that a lot of people have, that we're just tired at the end of the night and fighting with the kids to go to bed, and we have different parenting styles, so then we get our feelings hurt about who's not supporting who on how we should discipline the kids and how our bedtime routine should be. So a lot of times for me it's feeling, when I'm feeling emotionally connected, when I'm feeling that she loves me or that she desires me or whatever, I'm way more apt to want to engage, even if I'm tired. But I'm maybe more stereotypical on like man rules, where they say a guy could just get in a wicked fight with his wife or girlfriend, and then if she just makes any reference to wanting to get physical, he'll just drop everything and go for it, right? And I find that it's not the case with me. That I find that I do need, it is a process, it's a ramp up process, and I do need to feel that connection. And I totally buy this attachment theory, that all the stuff that's coming out, that the work of Dr. Sue Johnson and everyone, that it's not really about like how much or how often or what kind, or spicing it up or doing whatever, or pouring into the situation or making it super fun. I think those are all fleeting attempts at connection. And I agree with the times that I feel emotionally connected and vulnerable and in the moment and loved and giving love and taking risk and having that, when it all comes together, is when it's like that explosion, like that movie from the 80s, Cocoon, where all of a sudden, boom, something is just transmitted in from me to her and her to me, and that is like beautiful and it's spiritual. And I would love for those times to increase. I will say that right now it's not, it's just doesn't, I've been traveling a ton, she's been traveling, and it's not something that I'm complaining about, but it is, when I kind of go into victim mode, it is something I think about, that we should be connecting more. And I think all of that is just a byproduct of how I'm feeling. When I'm feeling grateful, I'm usually feeling grateful for everything. When I'm feeling in fear, feeling whatever it translates from all aspects of my life right into my sex life. So yeah, I think for me, a lot of it is staying grounded and staying, trying to stay spiritually connected myself, so that I'm not as worried about what she's thinking about me, or how I'm feeling, and I'm just as concerned about how she's feeling and making her feel comfortable and making her feel safe and doing what I need to do to be there for her, and that's those are the times where things work out so much better, when I'm actually not focused on myself so much, and I'm not thinking about the outcome of, like, I hate to say it in these terms, but closing the deal, like ramping up and wanting to do things fast and then wanting to, jump right in on it. That when there's a process, but there's no expectation that it's going to go all the way. Even in marriage, with 15 years of marriage, I need to remain open to the fact that we could just be hanging out and enjoying each other, and it may not go anywhere, and let go of all those expectations. So that's a lot of what I'm saying, but this again, this is a topic that we could come at it from 10,000 different ways, honestly. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. And for sure, it won't be the last time that we touch on this one.
Thank you, Michael.
What I appreciate so much is just the honesty. I mean, what I love about both you guys is just the willingness to be honest. It's just really powerful to be a part of a conversation of two men who are just being so honest. So I appreciate that. And, you started by talking about what comes up when you're in a relationship versus what you had going on before you were really in this committed relationship, in this marriage. And, the insecurity and the body image stuff. I mean, I had that, and I can still have that stuff creep up. I mean, and I didn't even mention that, and you went right there. And, and I appreciate that, because, that's the stuff that we men don't necessarily have permission to talk about, don't necessarily know how to talk about, but it definitely gets in the way of us being able to be present. And what I loved about what you said is that at this point, it's about letting go of the expectation, or even the requirement that it has to go a certain way, that it has to be a certain way. And then just, letting things go where they're going to go. And maybe it's just cuddling. Maybe it's cuddling turns into sex. Maybe it's sex turns into cuddling. Maybe it's just making out and heavy petting or touching, or maybe it ends in, one of us masturbating, usually just one of us. No, I really appreciate it. I know, with your own connection to your own sexuality and your own journey around understanding kind of how to be a man sexually, I appreciated just your openness and honesty, quite honestly. And everything you said, I mean, it's very, very similar to where I'm at, like Tim was saying. That's all.
Thanks, Dan.
And Michael, another layer of getting to know you. I really appreciate knowing what I do know already about you. It just brings about this much deeper respect and admiration for who you are. So thank you. What you touched on with the body image stuff, what you touched on with the disassociative experiences. There's so much more to you and to the story. I feel like I already know that you just kind of jumped into here about who you are and what your sexuality means to you, and what your relationship to your wife means to you. So I just really appreciated all of that gut level honesty, the lingering shame that you allowed yourself to share. It just blows my mind. And it's that part of you that I just continue to grow more and more fond of, that you have that vulnerability. And I'm just really, really grateful for it. And then at the
Yeah.
other side of it is my wanting to, reach out and grab you and give you a great big hug of just how special a guy you are, right? What I heard from you was your journey of intimacy, and similar to what I'm hearing from Dan, and it's kind of the segue into what I'm feeling compelled to talk about. So I just want you to know how much you being so vulnerable on this specific subject, every conversation we've ever had regarding it, you seem to be really in touch with the pain of what you've suffered, and not in a self-loathing way. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm getting to the point of what I'm trying to say there, but there's a level of self-love that proves the work you've done, and they're continuing to do, right? Continuing to do. So I'm just really, again, touched by what you shared tonight, and sending you a big hug, and knowing that you're okay. You don't necessarily need a pick me up. You're okay in this space. That's what's really kind of the sweetness of where you're at.
Yeah, thank you. And I do want to say I appreciate that, because it felt like super like from your heart. But you and Dan and John, you guys have made it so I feel fine talking about whatever, because I feel it's taken me a long time to feel this in recovery in my life, but I believe what you guys say. I believe that you guys love me and that you're my friends, and that, and it makes it easier. It makes it very easy for me to get real. So in some weird way, it's testament to you guys that, I feel comfortable talking about this stuff.
All right, Tim.
So my turn, right?
You're up, Buttercup.
I'm relating a lot to both of you, and psyched I got to go third, because I really did not have a clue where to start. So I'm gonna cheat and play off of both of your shares, because they both brought up a lot. So the piece, Dan, that you shared with where Nancy's at, him and I are in certainly in a similar position. I made the mistake of saying, maybe it's menopause, and it didn't go over very well. And that's my just being a buffoon. I have a tendency of being completely clueless and insensitive at times when I don't mean in any way, shape, or form to be that way. So what's been interesting for us is Kim's going through a growth experience of her own. I've certainly been going through a growth experience of my own, and we're not growing apart because of these kind of parallel yet separate paths that we're both walking right now. But physically, we're not nearly as active as we have been with one another. But it's making us more comfortable in a lot of ways with each other, just being who we are. There's an interesting thing going on, and I can't really put my finger on it, other than we're both, I think, like Michael touched on, too damn tired and too damn concerned about the kids walking in the door any minute to put too much effort into actually having sex as often as the man rules would apply. And as a result, we're actually having better conversations, and we're having more intimacy is the realization I'm having, just listening to you guys share. And I'm pretty sure Kim would agree with that. You guys know is that I've been doing this work with these women all of a sudden who have been reaching out to me to support them through some really heavy stuff that they're all three different women coming to a conclusion that there is this deep need for healing between the male and the female archetypes, and we're supposed to do this work. And that's a whole nother subject. But what's been really wild is how much you guys mean to me, how much I've been able to share with you guys about this journey and about doing this work, and the real clear boundaries and the clear support of be mindful and be aware of, the way John put it, where the blood flows when doing this work. And and then Dan, you sharing with me and being very direct and make sure that whatever is going on, you're sharing all of it with Kim. So all of that's guiding this really interesting phase of my relationship with my wife, where these very open and very trusting women in their process asking me and calling me into this work with them is making me much more aware and alert to the fact that Kim is going through her own experience that doesn't require literally like a hands-on experience from me. There's literally almost like a hands-off thing going on from her that's not been, it's not stated that, but there's just this real space experience that we're having. And it's not threatening. Neither one of us is feeling threatened. If anything, we're both feeling really open, and we're much more focused on what are we doing as a family. How are we communicating some important issues to our children now that they're of an age to cognitively understand some of the deeper questions in life. And it's really interesting. So again, I'm talking a lot less about sex because I feel like I'm becoming much more intimate with my wife as a result of not having sex as often as the rules say I should. So there's a deepening in our relationship, and then there's this, kind of it's not a joke by any means. It's a very serious statement we both made when we got married, which is, here's the rule on the whole, what you don't do, which is, we made a commitment to be with one another and we're going to keep that commitment. If you're going to break the commitment, this is the man rules thing that I know you hate, you're going to man up and she's going to woman up if that commitment's going to be broken. There's not going to be any, nonsense. So there's always going to be a level of intimacy and honesty that if that road starts to open, we're going to talk about it. And what's interesting about this place where I'm at is I'm not worried about any of that. It's like we have this deeper conversation now about intimacy and about physicality and about the body. And then Michael, what you touched on about the spiritual component and the transmission of energy, the shared experience, the true aha touch of when two people can be in union. I feel like that's much more of what's happening right now in my life as a whole. And I'm beginning to see my wife, not to sound corny, but almost much more in a spiritual light than I ever have. And certainly much less in a physical light. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but this is the experience I'm having that's really visceral at this part of my life. And, I think it all informs also the fact that my daughter's 10 years old, going on 11. And Kim and I are both hyper sensitive to, we want our daughter to be respected. We want our daughter to feel loved and adequate and strong and intelligent and measured in every other way but simply her physicality. And we want to make sure we are modeling all of that, and our son as well, obviously. I probably should have said that. So I think there's this conscious evolution of intimacy happening, and sex is no longer, or not that it ever really has been, but is not so damn important. So I hope I haven't spoken in too many circles there, but the tendency for me to like to crack jokes based on being uncomfortable is still part of my life. But this one is not that situation. It's just one of the best jokes my dad ever told me. So you all know the 3 levels of marital sex?
No.
It's important information for your listeners, Dan.
All right. There we go. Everybody listen up. Get your pen and paper.
So, this is important. There are 3 levels of marital sex. The first level is honeymoon sex. It should be, according to the rules, the best sex you've ever had, the most wild. It can happen anytime, anywhere, all the time, right? That's honeymoon sex. So once the honeymoon phase is over, then it transitions into the second phase, which is sometimes sex. Sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's good, sometimes, not so great. But sometimes is enough. And sometimes, you're having sex. And then it transitions on to the hallway stage. And that's when you pass one another in the hallway and you say, fuck you.
Oh, jeez. Oh, boy.
Oh, good Irish Catholic.
There you go.
Yeah, there it is.
There it is.
I'm happy to share the big punchline there of the joke in my share is I'm happily in the sometime phase of my marriage.
and don't anticipate that third one.
And
right.
and occasionally, we stumble into some hallway sex every once in a while. And actually, we regress back to some honeymoon sex too sometimes. So.
Yeah.
Nice.
On that note, Tim, let's make like good Catholics and pull out.
Oh, jeez.
Because that's always
now we're gonna all start breaking out our Catholic sex joke.
Oh God. When you started your share, I immediately started thinking like, oh shit, are we gonna tell our like actual sexaholics story? Because I'll spend way too much time just talking about how much my dad scared the shit out of me about sex. So.
Oh my. That can be one of our next conversations is how what we learned really kind of distorted everything that we're trying to work our way to. But you said something, Tim, it hit me so profoundly that I want to share this because again, your honesty, but how you talked about this, because I totally identify with it. But you said something that really, I think for our listeners, I really want to emphasize this because this is what came up for me. The gift of not having sex with our partners is that we learn true intimacy.
Yeah.
That is really powerful because I feel like that's exactly what I'm doing too. And I'm learning the value of that. I'm really learning the value of intimacy. And, as part of the man rules is that intimacy is sex and that all intimacy should lead to sex and that, you're really only getting your needs met if you're having sex. And we all know that that's not true, but that's part of the baggage and that's part of the background noise. And I think you just said it so beautifully about that. And I love how you said that, what could have been a very precarious situation with these women inviting you into their work has actually opened up an incredible appreciation, not only for these women, but for Kim. And because you're doing it so openly and transparently with everybody, wow, shocker, that it's just creating more intimacy for you with Kim and trust. That's really cool. The lie out there is that for men to really feel engaged in their marriages, we have to be having sex all the time and that somehow means something. And what I also heard you saying that helped me as well was by virtue of this, not only are you learning intimacy, but you are automatically moving further and further away from objectifying Kim, from seeing her only as, a sex object or as, a means to an end in many ways is what a lot of us end up doing with women is it's just like, how am I going to get off? And you just happen to be, I got a box of tissues and porn, or I've got you, I'll take you. That's a crude way of saying it, but so I really, really appreciated, what you were sharing about that, and just how mindfully and thoughtfully you're navigating it. So thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that a lot.
MD, the doctor, Dr. Love.
I was thinking how this takes work. It wasn't like the Meg Ryan movies that I grew up on in the 80s of how all this weird stuff happens and you end up with the girl in the end. No one ever really modeled or showed me or informed me that it's normal for it to be a struggle and for it to be difficult and beautiful all at the same time. So that's the kind of the theme, and that I don't think the three of us are any different. I think a couple of thoughts came to mind. I may be out in the dark, but when you say, you're doing this, helping these women with this other work, I don't know who our listeners are, but they may have questions about what are you guys talking about when you're saying you're helping other women with the female male thing. And the other thing that came to mind is Kim aware of the experience you're having of feeling closer and feeling more connected and feeling actually more love and intimacy and a deeper friendship? Are you involving her in that kind of emotional experience that you're having? One reason why I ask is sometimes I think it's important to speak that out because so that she knows that you're feeling closer. I'm not your counselor, I'm your friend, but those were two thoughts that came up. And the other is just how, I don't know, I just have this admiration for you around like your insight, like you're like an old soul where you're kind of reflecting on some pretty deep things as they're happening and you're making sense, like existentialistic, your sense of things of like there's meaning in everything that's happening. And I love that you brought your kids into that process, that there's a lot of modeling going on and wanting to help mold these children in a pretty jacked up, when the sex that's being infiltrated into our society right now, not to seem like an old curmudgeon, but it's really like, it's fast food. It's like McDonald's. It's like they're saying like, eat this and you're gonna feel better. And what we're talking about is like working towards a really beautiful meal, a real super like healthy, and the preparation and the work that goes into it, and the buying of the fresh, vegetables, and then the connection that's happening while you're making food and enjoying it together, and bringing the kids into that process and showing them how to do it right. It takes a lot more time and it takes more work and thoughtfulness, and it sounds like that's what you're doing, which is great. So appreciate that. That's a really good example for me. And I'm going through this with my kids too, because my son's turning 12 next week and my daughter just turned 10. So we're having lots of discussions around these issues, and it's nothing like I have ever experienced. I have never had one conversation, at least your dad told you a joke about sex. I've literally, with my mother or my father, there has never been one conversation that even came close to anything regarding sex. So I don't know. Those were a bunch of disjointed thoughts, but that's that. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. And I appreciate all the points. And Dan, I don't know, format wise, timing wise, how much clarity I should put into the work I am doing.
I think it's valuable. I mean, if you can kind of just give a quick kind of succinct overview of it. I mean,
Yeah.
It's important for people to know not only what you're talking about, but that this is something that's out there.
Got it. Part of the work I do and it's more about my spiritual practice. I have a deep connection to what I call just nature-based spirituality and ritual and ceremony associated with that. And the women that I've been particularly working with lately, have been calling out for almost a new set of rituals, a new set of ceremonies, a new set of tools to heal this great divide or this great wound between men and women. You know, when we look at our cultural representations of how the matriarchy has been, quite frankly, brutalized by the patriarchy, and especially Western culture. So to be asked directly by some of these women to stand up in a sense and hold space is a term we use a lot for these rituals and these ceremonies that they are exploring, but wanting to have a male presence for the sake of healing this wound, rather than it perpetuating and swinging the axe the other way, where women want to lash out against the wound. So I hope I'm being specific enough there. It's kind of hard to describe, but what it boils down to is I have a set of skills as an outdoor educator, where part of what I'm doing is actually bringing these women out into a deeper, more wild aspect of the natural environment, and helping to provide a container that they feel safe in and that they feel witnessed, quite frankly, in the work they're doing by a man who is conscious of his masculinity and conscious of, you know, his ancestral piece to this wound between men and women. So I hope that speaks to that a little bit more clearly. And the thing you mentioned about, does Kim know? It's really interesting you said that, because today, as I left the house this morning, I literally said it 3 times. I was holding Kim and saying, you know how much I love you. And it wasn't a question. I wasn't asking her. I was stating it. And it was funny, the third time I said it, she actually finally kind of paused to, you know, she was, you know, trying to get back to work kind of thing. And it struck me that I had a moment of clarity to realize that what a great opportunity for me to be more communicative about how I am feeling. So thank you for reinforcing something that instinctually hit me this morning. I'm going to follow through on that for sure.
Awesome, man.
That's awesome.
Thanks, bud.
Well, guys, I just really want to thank you again. I mean, I think this has been a powerful conversation. I had no idea where this was going to go, and I was a little nervous to start it off, quite honestly. You know, I hope our listeners really appreciate what it takes to put yourself out there, but to also understand that this is a practice. This is something that we've all taken a lot of time to learn how to do, that all men have this in them, and that this is something that most, if not all, men want to find words for and find a voice for. So I just want to really thank you both for helping to model that, and for another great episode of the Man Rules podcast, deep dive edition, not deep throat edition, but just the deep dive edition. And, so I had to throw that in. All right, guys.
Had to go there.
You know, come on. It's sex. All right. Love you guys.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Man Rules podcast, where we don't let the rules rule us. If you have ideas for guests, topics, or even want to be a guest, send us an email at ideas@themanrules.com, and check out our website and everything we're up to at themanrules.com. The only question we have to ask is what kind of man you want to be, and what's keeping you from being that man.